Ladies and gentlemen, peace is not the absence of war. It is the presence of purpose, the presence of justice, and the presence of understanding. Today, we are called not just to observe, but to align, to stand, and to engage with a nation that holds within its borders a treasure of history, a furnace of resilience, and a beacon of potential, Pakistan. Every nation exists for a reason. It does not simply emerge because of the ambitions of men or the outcome of conflict. Nations are born out of necessity, guided by divine providence, woven into the fabric of history with a specific role to play in the symphony of human civilization. The creation of a nation is not random, it is intentional. And when we look at Pakistan, we must not merely see borders drawn in the aftermath of colonial departure or the division of land between communities. We must go deeper. We must ask, why was this nation birthed? What role does it play in the global purpose of peace and order? Pakistan occupies a space on the world map that cannot be ignored. It is not a peripheral land, it is a central axis. To the west, it meets Iran and Afghanistan, nations steeped in ancient histories and modern challenges. To the east, it touches India, home to over 1 billion people and a long, complex history with Pakistan. To the north, it neighbors China, a global superpower and economic giant. To the south lies the Arabian Sea, a vital waterway for global trade and maritime movement. Pakistan does not sit in isolation. It stands at the crossroads of cultures, economies, and ideologies. Its very geography makes it indispensable to the conversation of peace in Asia, and by extension, to peace in the world. When God allows a nation to be placed in such a critical region, it is not for chaos but for coordination. The position of Pakistan suggests influence, not insignificance. That land is a bridge, a connector between Central Asia and South Asia, between the Middle East and the Far East. It is a land that touches trade routes, energy corridors, and digital highways. Whoever ignores Pakistan's role in regional stability is not merely missing a political calculation. They are misreading a purpose. Pakistan's strategic importance also lies in its potential to become a model for cooperation among competing worldviews. Within its borders, one finds linguistic diversity, ethnic plurality, and religious variety. From Sindhis to Punjabis, from Balok to Pashtuns, from Muslims to Christians and other minorities, Pakistan houses a tapestry of people groups that mirror the diversity of the wider region. This diversity, though at times a source of internal tension, is also a source of potential harmony. If peace can thrive in Pakistan, if understanding, tolerance, and justice can take root in such a complex social environment, then it becomes a living example of what peaceful coexistence looks like in the 21st century. But peace is not only external, it must be internal first. The international community often looks at nations in terms of their foreign policies, military alliances, and economic exports. But the deeper matter is always identity. How does a nation see itself? What is its narrative? What is the collective story it believes about its origin, its worth, and its destiny? Pakistan must not be reduced to a country born of conflict. It must be understood as a nation born for contribution. And the world must help to nurture that narrative, not distort it. The message that must echo from every platform, every pulpit, every summit is this: that Pakistan is not to be seen through the lens of fear, but through the lens of its global purpose. The presence of instability in and around Pakistan is not a reason to withdraw. It is a reason to engage. Where instability is greatest, so is the need for peace. And where the need for peace is greatest, the world's attention must be most focused. When a nation sits at the center of global tension, it also sits at the center of global opportunity. This is the paradox of strategic geography. Pakistan is not on the edge of the world's concerns. It is near the heart of them. Understanding this is the beginning of wisdom for international cooperation. When we honor the placement of a nation, we begin to honor its purpose, and when we recognize its purpose, we begin to see our shared responsibility to ensure that it fulfills it. Perception is powerful. The way a nation is seen by the world shapes the way it is treated, engaged, and included, or excluded, from the table of global decision-making. Mislabeling is not just a mistake in language, it is a failure of leadership. It is a distortion of reality that leads to distorted relationships. And nowhere is this more evident than in the way the world has too often misunderstood and misrepresented Pakistan. For decades, global narratives have painted Pakistan with broad strokes, using terms that are born not from understanding but from distance, suspicion, and often fear. To many, Pakistan has been seen primarily as a hotbed of extremism, a haven for instability, and a risk to peace rather than a partner in it. But labeling a nation based on the actions of a few, or on selective moments in history, is not only unjust, it is unwise. It overlooks the complexity of a nation's journey, the integrity of its people, and the sacrifices it has made in the pursuit of stability. Pakistan is not the source of global extremism. It has been one of its most afflicted victims. It has bled in the streets of its cities, lost thousands of soldiers and civilians, and endured waves of attacks that would cripple many nations. From Karachi to Peshawar, from Quetta to Lahore, the people of Pakistan have suffered not because they nurtured violence, but because they stood in its way. They became a frontline in a battle that was global in nature, but disproportionately local in cost. The war against terror may have been declared by international powers, but it was fought in large part on Pakistani soil by Pakistani citizens, for the sake of both their country and the world. To ignore this is to insult the resilience of a people who have buried their children and rebuilt their schools, who have seen their places of worship attacked, but have not turned to vengeance, who have been accused of harboring chaos even while confronting it head on. The narrative that paints Pakistan as a danger to peace must be confronted with truth. And truth is not based on headlines, it is rooted in history, in evidence, and in principle. Every time a nation is misrepresented, the potential for partnership is lost. The world cannot afford to alienate nations that are pivotal to the cause of peace. To mislabel Pakistan is not just a diplomatic error. It is a failure to recognize a strategic ally, a culturally rich society, and a nation with one of the largest populations of Muslims who aspire to live in peace, raise families in safety, and participate in global progress. Stereotyping creates isolation, and isolation breeds frustration. When a nation feels constantly accused, unfairly judged, and perpetually blamed, it begins to question the sincerity of those who call for cooperation. What the world must learn is that perception must be earned through relationship, not through repetition. The narrative about Pakistan should be written not only in Western newsrooms, but in dialogue with Pakistani voices, with scholars, leaders, educators, and citizens who live the realities that others merely speculate about. It is in these authentic conversations that a true picture emerges, a picture not of perfection but of perseverance. Pakistan is home to more than 240 million people, people who love their families, respect their traditions, value education, and hope for prosperity. These are not fringe extremists, these are the majority. These are the doctors, engineers, teachers, artists, and farmers who build the nation each day, far from the glare of international media. Their stories rarely make headlines, but their contributions shape the nation's soul. Mislabeling a people leads to mistrust. Mistrust breeds division, and division is the enemy of peace. The world cannot afford to continue writing a one-dimensional story about a multidimensional nation. It must be willing to listen more than it speaks, to understand more than it assumes, and to engage with honor instead of suspicion. Only then can mutual respect begin to replace mutual doubt. Only then can partnership be born out of principle, not prejudice. Geography is not accidental. It is intentional, and it carries prophetic significance in the story of nations. The placement of a country on the face of the earth reveals something about its calling, its responsibility, and its influence. Pakistan is not placed where it is by coincidence. It is a nation positioned at a geopolitical intersection, a strategic access point between civilizations, economies, and ideologies. Its location tells a story, and that story demands attention, not just from political analysts, but from moral leaders, educators, peace builders, and visionaries who understand that peace is never isolated, and that the stability of one nation can determine the equilibrium of many. Pakistan connects regions that have defined human history for millennia. To the west lie Iran and Afghanistan, with ancient empires and contemporary conflicts. To the east, India, another nuclear power, a rising economy, and a country with which Pakistan shares deep cultural roots and unresolved tensions. To the north, China, a superpower with strategic partnerships and global ambitions. And to the south, the Arabian Sea, a critical waterway through which global trade flows. Pakistan sits at the meeting point of Central Asia, South Asia, and the Middle East. This is not merely geography. This is a global corridor, a living artery in the body of international relations. When peace is present in such a place, it acts like a stabilizer in a region often shaken by historical rivalries, ideological clashes, and economic inequality. When peace is absent, the tremors ripple far beyond its borders. The decisions made in Islamabad are not confined to the limits of the country. They affect Kabul, Delhi, Tehran, Riyadh, Beijing, and even Washington. Peace in Pakistan does not only serve Pakistan, it serves the planet. It creates conditions for safe commerce, for cultural exchange, for diplomatic resolution, and for countering the forces that thrive on instability. It is important to understand that peace is not simply the lack of conflict. Peace is structure, peace is policy, peace is investment. It is the presence of systems that protect justice, enable opportunity, and empower citizens to pursue their purpose without fear. In Pakistan, the seeds of such peace have been planted again and again, but seeds require nurturing and nations require support. The international community cannot afford to be indifferent. What happens within the borders of Pakistan will eventually echo in the chambers of the United Nations, in the markets of London, and in the cities of the developing and developed world alike. Pakistan is not just a land of strategic interest. It is a land of strategic potential. Its geographical position gives it the power to become a hub for economic integration, a bridge between East and West, a connector between energy routes and trade networks. Major projects such as the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor (CPEC) highlight what is possible when infrastructure, diplomacy, and development align. But these initiatives require stability, and stability requires peace. And peace requires the world to take responsibility not only for its own interests, but for the welfare of regions whose fate affects everyone. If global peace is truly the goal, then peace in Pakistan must be part of the process. It cannot be an afterthought. It must be central to the vision of sustainable development, regional cooperation, and international dialogue. Too many decisions in global politics are reactive, responding to crisis instead of investing in prevention. But peace is proactive. It requires foresight. It demands long-term thinking, and it thrives in places where hope is given a platform, where infrastructure is built with intention, and where partnership replaces patronization. Pakistan's role is not passive, it is active. It is not on the margins of world affairs. It is near the center, and the world must treat it as such. To stand with peace in Pakistan is to stand for the stability of an entire region. It is to recognize that borders are not barriers. They are bridges when approached with wisdom and mutual respect. Peace cannot remain a slogan on podiums. It must become a policy in practice, especially when dealing with nations that sit at the heart of global intersections. There is a dangerous tendency in the global discourse to judge a nation by its worst moments, to define a people by the actions of a minority, and to speak louder about their struggles than their strengths. Pakistan has too often been subjected to this kind of judgment. It has been framed through the lens of conflict, mischaracterized as a source of extremism, and spoken of in terms of risk rather than responsibility. But the truth demands a deeper look. Pakistan is not the originator of violent extremism. It has been one of its most enduring and wounded victims. It is not the land from which terror is born, but one of the lands where terror has taken an enormous toll. Over the last 2 decades, Pakistan has experienced repeated waves of terrorism, religious violence, and political destabilization, not because it endorsed these forces, but because it stood in resistance to them. The people of Pakistan have buried schoolchildren, worshippers, soldiers, and civilians, all lost in the battle against forces that reject peace and exploit ideology for destruction. Yet these tragedies have not defined the spirit of the nation. Instead, they have revealed its resilience. The men and women who continue to teach, build, serve, and believe in a better future are the true face of Pakistan. They are not on the front page of newspapers, but they are on the front lines of progress. Pakistan's military and law enforcement agencies have fought a grueling and costly war against terrorism within their own borders. Entire regions, such as the tribal areas once dominated by extremist groups, have been reclaimed, rebuilt, and reintegrated into national life. Thousands of lives have been lost in this process, both in uniform and out of it. These sacrifices are not simply national, they have global implications. Pakistan has served as a buffer, absorbing the blow of a conflict that transcends geography, ideology, and religion. Its people have faced the same enemies that threaten global peace, yet they are seldom recognized for the price they have paid. It is critical to recognize that no society chooses to be attacked from within. No community seeks to become a battleground for forces beyond its control. And when a nation becomes the theater for a war it did not invite, it deserves not blame but solidarity. Pakistan has not exported extremism, it has suffered under it. And the continued tendency to associate its name with violence without context or acknowledgement of its suffering reveals a failure not just of fairness, but of global empathy. There is also a psychological cost to mislabeling. When a nation is continually portrayed as dangerous or unreliable, the aspirations of its people are overshadowed by suspicion. Its students abroad are viewed with wariness. Its professionals are questioned for their integrity. Its leadership is assumed to be complicit rather than cooperative. This is not just harmful, it is unjust, because the vast majority of Pakistanis do not align with extremism in any form. They want peace, opportunity, dignity, and a life where their children can thrive. They reject the ideologies that have brought death to their doorsteps, but they must also battle the stigma that the world has placed upon them. The global community has a responsibility to distinguish between a people and a problem. Pakistan is a land of poets and pioneers, of spiritual depth and intellectual legacy, of innovation and resilience. It cannot be reduced to a stereotype. The international narrative must evolve beyond simplistic binaries of good and evil, safe and unsafe. The truth is always more complex, and it is within that complexity that peace must be pursued. Real partnership begins with real perspective. When the world understands what Pakistan has endured and why, it will be more equipped to walk with the nation in its pursuit of peace, development, and stability. Understanding replaces suspicion. Compassion replaces accusation. And history demands that Pakistan be seen not just as a security concern, but as a nation striving for peace in one of the world's most difficult neighborhoods. Its story must be told with honesty, its challenges acknowledged with humility, and its potential embraced with hope. Nations are not healed by silence. Societies do not progress through avoidance. When injustice happens, it must be named. When wrongs are committed, they must be acknowledged. If peace is to be genuine, it must be built on truth. One of the critical reasons the world must stand with peace in Pakistan is because of the long-standing injustice that the people of Kashmir continue to endure. A conflict that is not only territorial, but deeply human, moral, and historical in nature. The Kashmir issue is not a distant dispute. It is a living wound. It affects millions of lives every single day. It influences the diplomatic posture of two nuclear-armed nations, and holds the potential to either destabilize or anchor peace in South Asia. This is not a regional footnote. It is a central chapter in the story of justice and peace on the continent. And yet, despite decades of resolutions, reports, and outcries, the situation remains unresolved, often ignored, and frequently misunderstood by much of the global community. For the people of Pakistan, standing with Kashmir is not a matter of strategy. It is a matter of identity. It is a commitment rooted in history, culture, and the deeply held belief in the right to self-determination. Pakistan has continually advocated for the Kashmiri people, not for political gain, but because the denial of justice anywhere becomes a threat to justice everywhere. If the cries of the oppressed are silenced in Kashmir, the world should not be surprised when silence becomes the norm elsewhere. The conflict in Kashmir has claimed lives, stifled dreams, and limited the future of a generation that was born under curfew. Human rights reports, eyewitness testimonies, and international observers have documented violations ranging from arbitrary detentions and communication blackouts to systemic violence against civilians. Yet much of this is either filtered through political lenses or dismissed as a bilateral issue. But human suffering should never be a negotiation between governments. It should be a call to conscience for all nations. Peace with Pakistan must also mean peace for Kashmir. The two are interconnected. A peaceful, prosperous Pakistan has always envisioned peace for its neighbors. It has repeatedly called for dialogue, diplomacy, and the implementation of United Nations resolutions regarding Kashmir. It has urged the global community to step beyond statements and engage with substance. It has appealed to the shared human responsibility of nations that claim to uphold human rights and dignity. And yet, these appeals have too often been met with indifference or delay. To support peace with Pakistan is to acknowledge that unresolved justice is a block to regional stability. You cannot build lasting peace on the soil of unresolved conflict. The international community must recognize that neutrality in the face of oppression is not peacemaking. It is abandonment. The people of Kashmir do not seek pity, they seek agency. They do not ask for charity, they ask for the right to choose their own future. And Pakistan has stood with them in that pursuit not as a provocateur, but as a protector of principle. Global powers must ask themselves what kind of peace they truly desire. Is it the peace of convenience, where hard truths are buried for the sake of trade and diplomacy? Or is it the peace of integrity, where justice becomes the foundation and not the casualty of international relations? Kashmir is not just a test of policy, it is a test of principle. And Pakistan's consistent position on this matter deserves to be understood, respected, and supported, not dismissed or misunderstood. To ignore the Kashmir issue is to ignore one of the most prolonged human rights struggles of our time. And to support peace in Pakistan while turning away from Kashmir is to advocate for a partial peace, one that does not heal but merely hides. Real peace must be inclusive. It must address root causes, not just surface tensions. It must include those whose voices have been silenced and whose rights have been denied. Pakistan has not been silent. It has spoken. And when a nation stands on the side of justice, the world must be wise enough to listen. Peace is not sustained by power alone. It is not secured by weapons, borders, or treaties. Peace is sustained by people. People who are educated, inspired, and engaged with a sense of moral responsibility toward each other and toward the generations that will follow. In the case of Pakistan, the power to shape a peaceful future does not rest solely in political agreements or military restraint. It rests significantly in the hands and minds of its youth. The future of peace in Pakistan, and by extension the region, will be determined by how well this rising generation is empowered, equipped, and given the platform to lead. Pakistan is a young nation, not only in terms of its age since independence, but demographically. More than 60% of its population is under the age of 30. This is not just a statistic. It is a window of opportunity. It is a potential reservoir of innovation, creativity, energy, and transformation. But potential does not automatically translate into progress. Potential must be cultivated. When youth are given education, direction, and vision, they become the architects of peace. When they are neglected or misled, they can become instruments of unrest. The world often discusses peace through the lens of diplomacy, economics, or security. But one of the most strategic investments any nation or international body can make in the cause of peace is to invest in youth development. This includes access to quality education, mentorship in civic engagement, platforms for entrepreneurship, and opportunities for global exchange. In Pakistan, there is no shortage of talent. There are students designing solutions to environmental crises, innovators creating tech startups, and young leaders working in remote areas to uplift communities. What they need is support, not just from their own government, but from a world that sees their value. Peace is not inherited, it is taught. And education is the most powerful transmission tool of peace. Pakistan's educational institutions, from its primary schools to its universities, are in many ways the front lines of peace-building. It is in the classrooms where narratives are shaped, where values are formed, and where the vision for the future takes root. If the world is truly committed to standing with peace in Pakistan, then it must take a deep interest in the quality and reach of education in the country. This includes curriculum development that promotes critical thinking, respect for diversity, and a sense of shared responsibility. Beyond formal education, peace is reinforced by engagement. The young people of Pakistan must be included in decision-making spaces. They must be invited to speak, to lead, and to imagine alternatives to conflict. Youth who feel heard become builders. Youth who feel ignored become disillusioned. And in a world where voices can be amplified across borders through digital platforms, investing in the narratives that young Pakistanis tell is just as important as investing in physical infrastructure. Their stories matter, their dreams matter, their leadership matters. Pakistan's youth are not disconnected from the global conversation. They are online, aware, and watching the world closely. They are not asking for sympathy. They are asking for sincerity. They want opportunities to contribute. They want the world to see beyond the stereotypes. And most importantly, they want to live in a nation that is peaceful, prosperous, and respected. This is not an unrealistic dream, it is a strategic imperative, because when the youth of a country believe in their future, they protect it. They nurture peace because they have a stake in it. Every global challenge today, from climate change to extremism, from economic inequality to technological disruption, requires a new kind of leadership. That leadership must be inclusive, ethical, and innovative. Pakistan's young people are capable of this leadership, but they need mentorship, partnership, and affirmation. When the world supports Pakistan's youth, it is not simply aiding one country. It is fortifying a generation that will influence the course of a region. Peace begins in the mind, and the minds that hold tomorrow's peace are already alive today in the hearts of young Pakistanis. Peace is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is not the responsibility of one nation alone, but the shared duty of all who value life, dignity, and justice. Pakistan, a land of resilience, rich heritage, strategic importance, and a people tested by trials, stands not as a threat to peace, but as a crucial partner in its preservation. The world must move beyond assumptions and headlines and step into relationship, into understanding, into truth. To stand with peace in Pakistan is not merely to support a country. It is to invest in a future where dialogue replaces division, where youth are empowered to lead with wisdom, and where justice is not delayed or denied, but delivered. It is to honor the sacrifices of those who chose hope over hatred, and it is to recognize that sustainable peace anywhere depends on principled peace everywhere. This is a call not for sympathy, but for solidarity. Not for charity, but for clarity. The time has come for the world to walk with Pakistan, not in fear, not in suspicion, but in mutual purpose. Because when peace takes root in Pakistan, its shade will reach far beyond its borders, and the world will be safer, stronger, and more whole because of it.